Welcome to Good Game Edmonton and another round of Party Chat with Digital Alberta, where we look back at some of the headlines and updates across the interactive digital media space in the last 3 months. I'm joined by Rowan Sommerfeld, President of Calgary Game Developers Association, and Mike McCready, Associate Dean of the School of Media and Information Technology at NAIT, and board member of Digital Alberta. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining me on this latest panel. It's good to have you.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you. It's
Beautiful.
great to be here.
Love it. Love it. Thank you so much. Okay, well, before we jump into the news headlines, I want to start off with something that, of course, I think has been on everyone's mind this year, and that's AI. We're all watching it evolve in real time, of course, and it's affecting us in so many different ways, arguably good or bad. But in terms of workflows across the industry, in our day-to-day jobs, wanted to kind of go around and just kind of get a sense of what your experiences have been like using AI this year, from accelerating workflows to responsible usage, go-to tools, and surprising tricks, or even other developments that you, of course, are able to share at this point in time. But yeah, let's start with you, Rowan.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, the AI change that it's bringing in workflows is definitely very significant. It's always cool to see things like, vibe coding becoming more significant. I know that there's a lot of IP questions that come up there with people that have done vibe coding. Who owns the code that's being written? Where does all that go? And I don't know if there's a lot of legal precedents that's set. So publishers and investors are very leery about people using it. To a degree, I also know that we're kind of in that phase of investing where if you say enough AI, then there are some people that will throw money at it. So it's super interesting, and I think it's going to get even more interesting as AI finds its niches where it can really thrive the most. We do see a lot of people using it, though, for sure.
And then as far as some of your personal usage of it this year, anything in particular that has stood out that's been helpful or things like that?
I mean, it was definitely helpful as far as personal usage goes. I was doing a little bit of that coding once upon a time. Not a technical person. I'm very much biz dev. So, it's nice helping write grants, helping write emails that can be particularly focused and prickly to write. We'll put them that way.
Yeah.
So it's very good at helping with all of those pieces for sure. But, even image generation is very, very interesting. It's just also got a lot of, there's controversy from artists with people using AI images, and there's a lot of sentiment that goes in the opposite direction that can come out as well. So, I mean, personally, I've used it and it's great, but I try to limit my usage just because, as it gets more used, people can really see the hallmarks of what is AI generated. And then sometimes, you get people rolling their eyes if they know that email was written by AI. They're like, I'm not even going to pay attention to this, right?
No, for sure. For sure. Mike.
Yeah. So how much time do we have? Because I could talk about AI for a very, very long time. Yeah. So I'll go as quick as I can. But I mean, for kind of the trends that I'm seeing, there obviously is like this kind of movement to try and look at AI to streamline and become more efficient. And I think there's a risk that as organizations we have to keep in mind, and that is putting the human out of the loop, so to speak. And I think that's a big piece. There's been some companies that I won't mention, some big kind of brands have been using AI to create commercials, and they're getting a lot of flack on that. And I posted on LinkedIn, I think the other day, a question and kind of looking at, are we seeing this movement of trend of more AI created content, whether it's in video games or commercials or whatnot? And I think we will see more of that, but I think that there's going to be a reckoning or a renaissance of coming back to human created content, because there's something to, like what Rowan said, there's something to the point where you can tell when it's AI created and it doesn't have that same emotion. So we're seeing this upswing, and then I think it's like a pendulum, and we're going to go back and seeing a bit more into that human created content. On that note, the CRTC just announced recently on their definition of Canadian content when it comes to standards that broadcasters have to, broadcast certain Canadian content. Their wording that they kind of use is that AI as a tool, but like key positions like director and other showrunner roles have to be held by humans and not by AI that does not help towards going towards that Canadian content. So even these organizations that are regulatory bodies are looking at that. For me personally, I use, so at NAIT we're a Microsoft shop, so we use Copilot a lot, and I've used that a lot. And the one things I love about using kind of enterprise Copilot is that it allows me to kind of connect to my content that I have within the organization. So it helps me be a better leader in that case. And then on the fun side, I've used it a lot on like Chat GPT. And one that I've discovered recently is Runway ML for image generation, which is really great. But one of the things that I've looked at that's a best practice is that there's not one tool that is the best tool to use for everything. It's to find the right tool for the right purpose, and sometimes mixing. So for example, I used Runway ML to create like a 50th birthday image of myself, but I used ChatGPT to help me write the prompt. And it helped me do a prompt engineering that I then put into Runway ML to get the specifics I needed. But I think it's kind of looking at a combination of tools to create your pipeline.
Right. Yeah, no. Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think that's something I kind of find myself coming across too with work as well on the marketing side, content marketing side. You're kind of using different LLMs. We kind of use a new one for the company that's sort of allows you to use a combination of all of them, whether you're just swapping between, Gemini or Claude or GPT and stuff like that. But yeah, it's interesting. I think I managed to pull together some email templates where I know very little about HTML and CSS and all that, but it's able to provide that preview visual, but also provide the code as well. So I can kind of understand, oh, that's how it's created all of that, and then make the necessary copy adjustments that I need that's on brand for the company, and then being able to bring that over to our platform and go from there. So yeah, no, it's really cool. I will tease as well that on the AI front, outside of video games, we're kind of utilizing AI at work as far as a new learning platform, adaptive learning platform for training when it comes to real estate that we offer. And it sort of creates that custom learning plan for you as an individual based off of what you already know and the knowledge gaps that you still need to address. And it kind of shifts accordingly based off of that, utilizing AI. So really powerful, really cool. Definitely, I think, valuable when it comes to learning, training, and a lot of those academic aspects. Yeah, definitely hoping to see, I guess, more in terms of how does it help the game development community as far as just speeding up some of the workflows so that it's saving time. I think that's kind of the angle that I look at it, for AI, but obviously the generative AI aspect is intimidating. But I would imagine workflow wise, instead of spending months, maybe you're spending weeks or days. That, at least I would hope that's maybe the aspect that could be looked at. But again, I know not as much compared to maybe the two of you on the call, but yeah.
One thing also that I would also maybe think about on that workflow, I definitely think that it has the ability to increase the workflow. And I know there's a lot of like, and Rowan mentioned this, a lot of hesitation about using generative AI as far as like what it looks like, but, and then as a copyright and IP. But one of the things that I've recommended to some, students and whatnot is, don't be afraid to use it from an ideation perspective and then create the final product from yourself. And I think that's where we're seeing potential. I've talked to some folks in the creative industry that they use it from an ideation perspective to ramp out a lot of ideas, and then they pick one and then they create it themselves. So that point I think is really good. Also, I think on the coding side, but one of the things I think is important to realize, especially with a lot of junior coders who are learning this for the first time, or a junior anything, is don't use AI as a tool to create and not understand the output. You're going to get into a lot of hot water, whether it's creating code that's going to bring the site down or be really unresponsive or unoptimized. So I think what's important is that really challenge what it's outputting and understand what it's creating and be able to recognize when to improve it. So just a quick example, I was working years ago, I was doing some Unity coding and I had AI helping me, and it wanted to do, so for the coders out there, it wanted to put everything in the update loop, which you don't do in Unity. It's unoptimized. And I was like, I challenged the AI on that, and it's like, oh yeah, you're right. And then it revised it. And so I think it's important for everyone that's using AI, especially on those coding aspects, is to really understand the output and the challenge when it's creating inefficient code.
Yeah, no,
Just
well
to
said.
build a little bit on what Mike was saying there as well
Yeah.
with ideation, when you consider how fast people can prototype games that they're looking to make, or even for like game jams, right? If you've got a team member missing for like an artist role or a sound role, people can just find, public repositories of this data that they can use, songs, even 3D models from something like Sketchfab. But people are using AI to make what their vision is in whatever their style is. And I really do think that it helps that prototyping and makes it a lot more feasible for those small groups, for sure.
No, totally. Yeah, no, that's well said from both of you. I appreciate that insight. I want to swipe over to some headlines now, and then we'll kind of keep the conversation going. But I know AI is very much a subject that we could dedicate multiple episodes just talking about the ins and outs and different avenues around AI. So I do appreciate your insights on that. And I'm sure we'll have other opportunities to talk more about it and just sort of more experiences around it. And maybe just words of encouragement to whether it's students learning game development or folks just out in the industry, whether it's indies, obviously members of, say, Calgary Game Developers Association and other groups like yours, Rowan. But yeah, just wanted to swipe over to headlines now. Of course, kicking off with Calgary news. Calgary's Miles Soonsay Foster took 7th place at the Nouns Invitational in Tokyo in early December. Repping Alberta on the global Smash Bros. Melee map, Soonsay also took 1st in Teaglok, I hope I'm pronouncing that one, Melee in Ireland back in October. Bow Valley's Indie Ignition Accelerator program held pitches at Platform Calgary for this year's Game Dev cohort. And the new Calgary Games Kiln kicked off its first cohort featuring 5 studios. Participants will go from ideation to commercially viable IP, plus sessions for mentorship and networking. The Calgary Game Developers Association held an activation during Innovation Week at Platform Calgary, as well as hosting their annual general meeting earlier this quarter. University of Calgary student Braden Bauman was named a Kennedy Scholarship recipient to support his academic and entrepreneurial endeavors into game development. The Saskatchewan-born developer has been creating and publishing games since junior high, even selling 3 titles to Cool Math Games. Now pursuing game dev in university with an awarded power-up to further his love for developing video games. Rowan, I want to turn it over to you here, obviously
Sure.
being the Calgary rep of this group. Tell me a little bit of some of your firsthand experiences, anything that kind of stuck out based off of some of these events, as well as just kind of hearing some of these other headlines in terms in the community.
Yeah, for sure. I love to hear Calgary being repped in the Smash universe. I think back to when I myself had a company that was going through Indie Ignition, and then they had an esports side. And I think to groups like Cold Hands Collective, there are people that are working to have Smash tournaments and stuff fairly regularly in Calgary, and it's like incredible to see somebody doing some good out there. And I expect we're going to see more as time goes on for sure. So that's cool. With Indie Ignition doing their second games cohort, I think that they've also done a film and animation cohort. I think just the one so far. And some of the pitches, I was watching that second cohort going through. It was incredible to see. I also attended that first Games Kiln speaker that they had. That was awesome. With groups like Nordicity, with people like Jason De La Roca and now John Higgins behind the wheel of this, it's amazing to see the ecosystem start to grow in Calgary. I'm a firm believer that Calgary is a bit of a powder keg of innovation. I've seen things like Platform and Catalyzer and the startup accelerators there. I've seen now these gaming accelerators. I really think that it's just a matter of time before some company makes it really big, right? It's more about how many swings Calgary is taking as a whole and people from Calgary are taking, as opposed to, at this point, it's just a numbers game. Somebody is going to get huge and it's going to be really big. And I can't wait to see a game studio in Calgary get, to that insane levels. And we already see things like Get to Work, right? That was a game that went viral. It had some crazy successes, right? So it's only a matter of time until we start to really have big studios come here or get created here.
And I appreciate the love towards esports. I feel like we'll be having you back on to dive a little more into the esports side, especially in the Calgary scene. Of course, lots to be said about that scene, of course, across the province. Coming out of Calgary, of course, Bow Valley with the esports program there in the esports arena. And one of the instructors, Shadi Hanna, friend and guest of the show here. And of course, the work that's being done with like things like the Alberta Scholastic Esports League and the Alberta Esports Association. But yeah, like tons to see with fighting game communities across the province between Edmonton and Calgary. I feel like there's a Battle of Alberta to be had at some point or another. I probably will do my best at Smash, but I've played a little of it. I'm no competitive player by any means, but I'm curious. Have you played much Smash, Rowan? Mike, I can see you smiling, so I'm curious if Smash has been on the docket at all in past play.
When I was much younger, I played, with siblings and I played with friends when we would do stuff, but I was good in those groups. But you look at some of these professional people, some of these like crazy Fox players out there, and it's like, there's no shot. There's no way I would hold a candle to those flames. Yeah. But, it's fun to pretend. But as soon as I try to enter and play, it's going to really become obvious to me how bad I am. So I'm like, I got to stay away from that. I don't need to see that.
Yeah.
I was just smiling because I was thinking, forget Oilers and the Flames. This is the new Battle of Alberta, right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Here we go.
But, I remember when I used to be an instructor a few years ago, at the end of the year, we'd bring in Smash Bros. And try and play against the students, and I just get my butt kicked. But I'm an OG fighter. Bring me a Street Fighter game, and then we're good to go. Like an OG Street Fighter. I can't play these newer ones, right? But that's where I grew up playing my fighting games, was on the Street Fighter series.
I love it. Well, I mean, going back to why we're here, like with this podcast, with this show that I do, like obviously it's part of the reason why I love doing it, because amplifying the news of guys like Soonsay, who's competing on the international stage, let alone national stage, international stage, repping Alberta. You don't hear about it much. So that's where I'm hoping to help fill that void. So I leave it to both of you as far as homework as we go into 2026. Any other leads on the esports front, I'm happy to hear those pitches in 2026 that we'll of course get to, where there could be some Street Fighter, there could be some Smash. So who knows? Maybe we all see each other there. I don't know, but it's definitely not neutral territory. I think it's in Edmonton, so sorry about that, Rowan. But speaking of Edmonton, heading over to Edmonton headlines, of course, we had Crimson Herring Studios released Hunter's Moon, a Sovereign Syndicate adventure. That's the second title for the studio and a prequel of their main game. Of course, this just came 6 months after Calgary's Zoogaloo Entertainment acquired them. And of course, for this new game release, Edmonton Screen was able to host a launch party to celebrate the studio's milestone. Beamdog is sunsetting the Beamdog client and store. Of course, studio says this won't impact currently owned games or DLCs. University of Alberta Esports Club ran a packed fall schedule of tournaments, including FIFA, Mario Kart, and Catan tournaments. Edmonton Screen hosted a year-end celebration at Epic Market alongside Ampia, ACTRA Alberta, and Digital Alberta, celebrating the wins, sharing war stories, and meeting collaborators, both old and new. And of course, the big news coming out of Edmonton this quarter, we had Arcanaut Studios having teamed up with Lucasfilm Games for a new Star Wars game. Of course, I'm repping the Star Wars t-shirt. A little fun anecdote. Audio listeners, just believe it. Announced during the Game Awards, of course, it's described as a spiritual successor to Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. The new Edmonton-based studio, headed by Casey Hudson, who created the Mass Effect franchise at BioWare, along with other veteran storytellers. Casey posted on X that this new story in a galaxy far, far away is expected to be out before 2030, despite the rumors. And also, did we mention they're hiring? head over to their website, arconautstudios.com/careers for their current openings. Guys, love to hear your thoughts as far as what do you feel this means for the game development scene in Alberta? Obviously, Rowan, from a community standpoint, and just your other work that you do, but also, of course, Mike, in terms of recent graduates, students, when it comes to looking at career opportunities. This obviously changes the conversation nonetheless, despite negative headlines in recent months. But curious to get your guys' thoughts on this news, as well as anything else on the Edmonton front that kind of resonates. Rowan, I'll start with you.
Sure. Well, founder of you said it was Mass Effect franchise. It's incredible to see people that have headed in companies that are big names that are now starting some of their own studios, some of their own work, some of their own games and stuff like that. And that's kind of the natural wave of indie game really big successes and stuff like that. Is you've got studios get big in cities, and then as the studios get big, you get lots of people, and it's like, BioWare had a pipeline from schools in Edmonton, and they would just take people, and then those people would become workers on AAA games, and then they'd go and start their own studios. And it's like, that's kind of how that pipeline looks to really cool stuff happening and to economic booms in game industries in whole cities. Awesome to see them working with Star Wars franchise. That's great. I look forward to seeing what they're going to come up with. But even larger, I like to see what AAA games are doing in spaces right now, because AAA games seem to be floundering a lot. And when they're floundering, that's when people go and try and start their own thing and do their own thing. And that's when we get really cool games and really cool successes.
Mike, I'd love to hear your thoughts, kind of building off of what Rowan said there. We'll talk a little more about education in a bit, but definitely want to get your take on this. Coming off of this, of course, latest news out of the game dev space, of course, here in Edmonton. I feel like I should have went with you first, but sorry.
That's okay. That's all right. Yeah, I'm actually really excited for both of those announcements of the Hunter's Moon and also the new Star Wars IP coming out. For me, I'm a big fan of like the deck builder type games, and so I'm really excited about. And I remember meeting Isaac a couple years ago, and just seeing, and trying to put my mind into his headspace, and just seeing this come to fruition is so exciting, not just for him but for the community. And then with the new Star Wars IP, I've been a longtime Star Wars game player. I'm still working on Jedi Fallen Order. Here and there and whatnot. So I'm really excited about that. And I think, we've heard a lot of news about the challenges of AAA studios that they face, and, a lot of layoffs and whatnot. And I think what we might see, and I've used this word before earlier in the podcast, but we might see this renaissance of new AAA style games that, these so Arconaut Studios, founded by people who've come from AAA companies, they're going to take their learnings from things that didn't work well in the past. And I'm only predicting, I don't really know if this is going to be the case, and apply that to create a better AAA company going forward here. And so I think that we might see, hopefully, not a repeat of mistakes of the past, and really help kind of see these new studios really thrive. So that's what I'm excited to see if there's an evolution of high caliber, high quality games, and really looking at doing them in a way that's going to be sustainable.
Well, the IP resonates, I feel. I mean,
yeah,
case
with everybody,
in point.
all the nerds and all the listeners, it resonates.
Yeah. No, of course. Yeah. Obviously, Rowan being based in Calgary, so this might be a dumb question, but in terms of these year-end gatherings like Edmonton Screen, of course, with the launch party, and year-end holiday gathering, curious, like, did we get a chance to check out any year-end events like that, or Mike, Edmonton Screen, anything there as we kind of wrap up 2025?
You know what? I haven't been able to make it up to Edmonton to get to anything going on up there. I know that the CGDA had our last monthly meetup, and it was, kind of Christmas stuff there. And we had a lot of familiar faces returning and lots of well wishes and everything to everybody. So, I mean, stuff like that is great. But I kind of, after stepping away from my company, I am personally less involved in the game scene right now outside of CGDA stuff. So I'm trying very much to stay connected. I'm a huge gamer, but I haven't been to anything going on lately. But it's always really cool to have things happening. And, we're very much pushing at the CGDA to have these kinds of things happening in Calgary and to kind of really develop the scene here. So good things are on the way, I'm sure.
I haven't been to any of the year-end ones as well, but some of my faculty have. I've been to the Edmonton Screen Christmas party. One of the things I guess want to speak about these gatherings is it's kind of a representative of kind of how the industry is in Alberta, right? Rowan's from Calgary, I'm from Edmonton, but we share in the successes. I was really excited to hear of the success of the Indie Accelerator through Bull Valley College, because the whole saying of rising tides raise all boats, and I think that's the one thing that's great about the Alberta ecosystem is that we celebrate the wins together, and I think that's also representative when these groups like Edmonton Screen and all these other associations come together to celebrate and to work together. It's really great to see. I think it's something that we need to see more of going forward here. Also, things I think is important and has been a mission of mine is helping to educate that these gatherings exist, right? So in
Right.
Edmonton, we've got Game Camp Edmonton, and they meet monthly.
Yeah.
And I did a tour seeing all the students that I'm responsible for at NAIT, and when I was talking to the game dev students, have you heard of Game Camp Edmonton? And similar probably to students that are in Calgary about CGDA, and I was surprised at how many hadn't heard of them. And so I think we have to do a better job in promoting and educating that these communities exist, because that's going to be how the rising developers really become embedded and connected, is through these communities like Edmonton Game Camp and CGDA Alberta. So I think it's our role to really help them realize that these opportunities exist.
Couldn't agree more. That's good intel for me in terms of furthering the different content that I create through this podcast in particular, but obviously other resources that are out there, whether it's with Digital Alberta, with CGDA, or obviously things like Alberta Makes Games. That has been a valuable resource in the past and kind of back in the hands of its original creator, developer, Craig, and has been updating that. Really excited to see kind of bringing these groups together and promoting that better. And I think that's an opportunity. Hopefully, I will kind of take that on as a to-do list item, I think, going forward. Rowan, obviously, having maybe a little more profile on the Calgary scene to do a more deeper dive, of course, and maybe having folks like Vanessa with Game Camp Edmonton, because obviously it's got a long history, going back to names like Ken Batista and stuff with Startup Edmonton and those days of different meetups that created its own groups and followings of their own and continue to exist today, like Edmonton Startup Week and activations like that. And of course, as we kind of conclude this aspect of the news, I just want to remind everyone, of course, the force will be with you always. I had to fit that one in, but of course, heading over to other headlines, of course, last quarter, we had Nathaniel Rossell from VR Cave and Basement Bunker Labs on the show. He had some advice for students looking at the game development programs, looking at the industry as a whole, and the encouragement was clear. Don't let the negative industry headlines discourage you. And, I'd say that's definitely worth repeating because obviously things rapidly change. Just like AI, things are changing every day. So when the start of entering a program and by the time you graduate and are looking for internships, co-ops, practicums, work placements, things are changing rapidly, and it may not be the same when you first entered it. So obviously, I'm going to turn this over to Mike to get your take on this and tell us a little more about NAIT's game development program. Of course, that was well promoted during AGS this year. But I just want to get a sense of where the game development program is right now, how it's preparing students for the industry at this point in time in particular, obviously from, diving into an indie studio to getting prepped for a potential AAA opportunity somewhere in between maybe. But obviously recent news from the Game Awards is definitely a positive as we get into the new year.
Sure. Thanks, Corey. Yeah. So, Nate does have our game development program that was just launched this year that has grown out of a past program that we had offered at NAIT, the Digital Media and IT program. The game development program, it's a 2-year program, and there's 2 specializations because we realize as a game developer, there's so many components to it, right? And so you can either be a specialization in our game programming stream or in our animation and design stream. There are some common courses, but really focusing in those 2 different areas, whether you're more on the creative, more on the logical side. And one of the things that our program is really doing is it's been, even though I mentioned it evolved out of an existing program, there's a lot of new curriculum that's been created to really be current and supportive of the needs that students have. Everything from including AI workflows in the programming side to looking at using the latest engines on the animation and design side, the latest tools. And really, one of the things that NAIT is doing, as I'm sure other post-secondaries are, is building those industry connections. So we've had a long-standing relationship with Edmonton Screen. Earlier this year, we partnered on an event in March that brought the game community together, the game development community together in Edmonton. And it's those industry connections that we're working on making and continuing to foster. It's going to be supportive for the students as they graduate. So being able to have, like you mentioned earlier, those work placements or whatnot, but even just awareness of this program and what this program means. I think all game development programs or game design programs really need to focus on going beyond the traditional skills such as the technical skills or the art skills, and looking at skills to make them a better human being, so to speak, the communication and the interpersonal, but also on the business side and how to think of a business. We had a graduate recently who graduated this past year who was able to actually present a pitch at the Alberta Game Series this past fall and got second place and had their game also showcased at GameCon Canada in the summer. And really seeing them thrive and their little studio thrive is an amazing experience to recognize that they're living their dream. I mean, it's a small studio. There's going to be those startup pains, but they are living their dream by being out there promoting their game um, and promoting their studio. So I think there's a lot of elements to game development and game design that need to be considered outside of your traditional stack that you would think about.
Right. And I guess in terms of the preparation, is the mindset for, getting job ready for a AAA studio, or is there that sort of that shift of conversation of like, there's a big indie space here in Alberta. We want you in Alberta. We'd like to keep you here in Alberta, in Edmonton. There's a vast community here. It's kind of the tone that's kind of set for the students in preparation of industry.
That's a great question. And, if you ask the students, they're probably going to say AAA because
Yeah.
everybody wants the holy grail, right? But I mean, we're realists as well and helping them realize that to get to that, if that is their goal, you need to start at the indie level. And I remember, in AGSs in the past, the Alberta Game Series in the past, there was the kind of rhetoric, which I still think stands true, is that it's the time of the indie, right? Despite seeing the amazing stories with Arcanet Studios, indies are where the thriving is, and there's a lot of opportunity there. Whether you're working at an indie, I've seen, out of Calgary, I keep seeing posts from Shifty Eye Studios for new job opportunities. I think they had a recent one for a character artist, right? Which is a great studio in Calgary. So I think it is the time of the indie and helping them realize that that is not a second class job. That is a job that should be desired because you learn so much at that level, right? So I think that's some of the mind shift that we have to work on. And then the other piece that we need to work on is that, it's okay to be an entrepreneur, right? And to go down that path as well. And then the last thing I think as educators we need to work on is helping them realize that the skills that you're learning in whatever game program you're in Alberta, they're transferable, right? We have a lot of our focus in our program as well on serious games where we teach them how to do training, develop training, how to develop gamified learning. And so it might not be where they want to get to in 5 or 10 years, but those skills as being a learning designer, creating gamified experiences is extremely valuable. And so there's a lot of opportunities for graduates of game development programs. You just have to be willing to kind of expand your horizon.
No, that's a good point. Because yeah, I think you mentioned a couple of key things that stood out for me in terms of sort of enhancing the overall experience when you're in the program, and that's taking advantage of, industry partnerships like events like what Nate did with Edmonton Screen. Hopefully we see more of that, which I think is super valuable, not just for students, but I think also for community to kind of bridge post-secondary and industry together to kind of be able to make new connections. But also the other thing too, that entrepreneurial piece, I think, is not talked about maybe enough. And something that was sort of touched on, in school for me in terms of freelancing, that's the other opportunity you can take if you don't want to stick to the newsroom vibe, going through broadcasting. But now that, that opportunity takes on so many other things when it comes to entrepreneurial opportunities, content creation, things like that. But to start your own studio, that entrepreneurial mindset is evident from the get-go. And I think the business side as well as the game side needing to take into account, but being able to lean on educators like yourself, Mike, to kind of bridge that gap for them to say, like, what are the resources available? Obviously on campus, I imagine you have the Maji Center to support, but also, of course, community resources and those community opportunities to network with other groups is so vital to enhance the student experience. But obviously, like you said, at the end of the day, they got to be willing to take it on. Anything else to add to that, Rowan?
I mean, some of the stuff Mike said in there is stuff that I could speak to that for just an hour solid, because I'm a
I love it. I love it.
I'm a business development guy. I
Right.
do biz
Yeah.
dev. I do operations for companies. And so, when he kind of briefly touched on, we look at these accelerators that people are running, and we look at people that want to make their own studio. A lot of the time you get hobbyist gamers that are like, I want to make a game and I want it to blow up. And you see things like, okay, some games with a single developer, like, Balatro or however you pronounce it correctly. Incredible game, so much fun. One dude made it and it did kind of blow up. But then they kind of underestimate the amount of like marketing that he must have had to do for stuff like that, right? And people think that if they just build a really cool game, it'll sell to lots of people. And it's like, no, you need somebody doing marketing, you need sales, you need testing loops. You have to constantly do this A/B testing to see what people like, what people don't like. And a lot of the time, these accelerators focus on teaching people that the business side of running a studio is so overlooked by the people that are getting into it, that it's like, I noticed I've been through a few accelerators now. I've been through Alberta Catalyzer for tech companies. I've been through Indie Ignition for gaming companies. And a lot of the time there's some overlaps, because it's like tech people fall into the same trap where they think they're going to make this cool thing, it'll sell itself. And it's like, no, there's so much more business stuff you have to think about. But this is one of my passion topics for sure. I could go on and on, but you got to focus on the business, because that's what it is.
Rowan, don't worry. I'm sure there'll be a part 2 where you and I can just go back and forth. I love the energy. I really do appreciate that. And it resonates. And we'll talk a little more on the investment side and the programming piece in a little bit, maybe to kind of speak more on that. But yeah, as we kind of continue going down the pipe here, of course, we have the big community event in the last few months, Alberta Game Series, a 2-day game development conference powered by Digital Alberta that took place during Edmonton Startup Week. This year being in Edmonton. Next year, 2026, we'll be back in Calgary. Of course, game developers, investors, service providers, and community members gathered to experience a full lineup of different things, from national industry numbers and Alberta's position within it, with the Entertainment Software Association of Canada, how to budget for sustainable studios in today's economy with Insert Coin, panel discussion on the future of the Alberta games ecosystem, definitely some real talk, real conversation amongst audience participation. Really enjoyed that. healthy pitch competition, of course, led by John Higgins, saw 5 studios pitch their projects, with the winner and runner-up going to Game Invest West. Of course, the winner of that competition was none other than 33 Games with Rebounder, and the runner-up, Ode Software with Highway Hijinks. Also pitched was Eat the Sun, Shoot the Moon with Keeps, Raven Mad Studios with Scarnfell, and OneSoft with Solitary Island. And of course, continuing on the conversations and talks was how code development really works with Snowden Studios. Had them on the show last quarter. Crafting go-to-market strategies with Digital Extremes. The VR Cave Journey with co-founder and CTO Nathaniel Rossell. Community building in the attention economy with Pies Are Awesome Ventures. Best practices to finish games with Mark Dara. And plenty of laughs from host Leif Olson Cormack, narrative designer turned stand-up comic and recent guest on the show. Between the two of you, I definitely saw Mike, but did we attend AGS this year? Show of hands. Like, yeah. Nope. Rowan, yeah. No, okay. It's all good.
You'll be there next year because it's in Calgary, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I will definitely be there. I just was
Okay.
unable to make it this time, unfortunately.
Well, I'll see you there next year. We'll hold you
there we
to
go.
it.
Absolutely, you'll see me.
Well, Mike, obviously being an attendee at AGS and, of course, repping NAIT and the game development program, anything that stood out to you, anything in particular amongst the sessions, the conversations, the guests, panels, anything like that that stood out the most for you?
The fire alarm.
Yes, the fire alarm. That was great. So, yes.
Sorry,
day 2.
We all had to evacuate the building. Yeah.
That was not scripted.
That's unfortunate.
That was not scripted. That sucked. That sucked.
No, joking aside, first off, I need to give a huge shout out to Chris Entwistle, who organized pretty much single-handedly AGS last year. A huge undertaking and a huge accomplishment. So I need to give that shout out. For me, so I remember going to the very first AGS. I don't know what year it was. It was a few years ago. And I've been to quite a few of them. I think I missed one. One of the things I think, just looking at it overall, because I'm looking at the trend now of the event and the growth that it had. And this was probably one of the best events we've had. But it's that consistency, which I think is key. The event has been running for a number of years now consistently. And I think that's a huge, takeaway just in our effort in general in the game space is there might be disappointments or struggles or challenges, but to be consistent, I think is going to be an important takeaway from that. For me, I think one of the things that I really enjoyed, I think most, was the VR Cave story. I remember meeting I think it was not Nathan, but Alex, his brother, many years ago when I started doing the research in VR at Lethbridge Polytechnic now. And I did a road show and drove around, and I drove up and talked to Alex for a bit. And this is before they blew up. And hearing how they blew up and then they contracted, and they could have given up, but they were consistent. And now look where they are here. That is an amazing story that I think a lot of people need to resonate with and use as an inspiration to kind of get through that hump or that bump or that drop, whatever the analogy you want to use, get through that, because it's going to be important, because they're going to happen. You're going to have disappointments. And so for me, that was the biggest takeaway of AGS this year, was that story that Nathan shared.
No, 100%. And I think that really resonates too for me. Like, that story was really impactful. You know, obviously with the two of us on the call today for attending AGS, I appreciated just being a sponge. And I think I was probably one of the very few that was not a developer or any clear association with game development, but just being a sponge as a content creator. I think that's, after a little while, I was trying to define, like, who am I? What am I in terms of the context of everyone in the room? And I think content creator finally stuck in my brain, as far as not really having imposter syndrome or anything, but, you know, being part of the community from a content creator standpoint. And I think we definitely, I think we need more of them in the room for AGS. And I really hope come next year, maybe at the earliest. Obviously easier said than done. I'm not part of the organizing team, but obviously I'd like to kind of see a
I
little
am.
more. Oh, okay. Well, I'll maybe
Pitch
pitch.
later.
I'll pitch later, but maybe a little bit of esports crossover. I don't know what that looks like, but really really emphasizing that community and the gaming world. I think Rowan, his ears perked up a little bit with that, but yeah, like I don't know what that looks like, but curious to see how things evolve because, like you said, it's consistent, but you're seeing the evolution of it, and I think it's something that's going to stick around for a long time because we need it. We need it. It brings people together, new conversations, opportunities for things like content creation and things like that. Good podcast content, I can tell you that. But yeah, I'll leave it at that. The five pitches before we move on, I do want to emphasize on the pitch competition and kind of get your take on that and what really stood out for you, Mike, amongst the 5 pitches and just sort of the preparation going into it, obviously, but what you were seeing from the projects in particular and anything that kind of stood out, and maybe just any takeaways in terms of advice for anyone that's listening that's looking to pitch their studio in that environment.
So there's a few things. First off, super happy that Ode Software was one of the pitchers and the second place. That's the studio I was talking about, Alex Ritchie, one of the co-founders. Amazing.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, but I also really loved the winning pitch game. The art style of that game was amazing.
Yeah.
For me, I think the biggest takeaway, so there's 2, was the passion that every developer had on stage for the pitch. They believed in their game. That came through without a doubt. So I think that passion is going to be super important. And the other thing that kind of came as a takeaway, and I don't remember, and it's probably good I didn't because I don't want to call any of the studios out. It wasn't Ode Software, let's put that out there. But there are some that I think, so when they did their pitch, then they got feedback from the panel, the judging panel. There were some of the studios or developers that were on pitch that disagreed with the feedback given by the pitch judge.
Yeah.
And I think there's a fine line of having that passion, but also being humble.
Yes.
Right. And so I think that as developers, they need to have that humility, willing to take the feedback, especially from people who live and breathe this business, such as those who were on the pitch panel, like the judging panel.
Exactly.
I think that was the 2 takeaways I got from that.
I'm glad you brought that up. I really am glad you brought that up. Those are great takeaways. I resonate with both of them. The artwork, the style between the winner and the runner-up, phenomenal. And as a NAIT alum, I'm biased, but I love that we got some NAIT representation there. But yeah, I think, especially coming from working in ECDev for a little bit as well, from a marketing side, storytelling aspect, I've seen a lot of pitches. I've seen a lot of companies pitch, a lot of startups, a lot of judge panels giving feedback, providing feedback after the fact. And 100% I agree with you. I think there is a time and place to kind of go back and forth in terms of, trying to understand, well, why do you say that sort of thing? But yeah, definitely as an audience member, it got to be a bit uncomfortable.
It felt awkward.
It was very awkward because, the judges are coming from a very disconnected from the game, from the studio, from the day-to-day of it. And that's you think of them as a potential investor or user of your game. So needing to take in that advice is very critical. Whether you agree or not, like you said, be humble, just take it in, nod your head. Yes, okay, let's take it in. But, let's move on gracefully.
See what you missed, Rowan, by not being there? You missed
wow, there's a fire alarm. There was some back and forth from the judges. And
there was drama. There was fire alarms. Oh my gosh. Yeah. No, I don't want to make it a bigger thing than it was, but it was interesting because, I think it just goes to show, honestly, just more opportunities for studios to pitch their project, to pitch their game. I think we just need to see more opportunities like that, whether it's in a semi-formal, informal environment or formal environment like that. And having a small panel of judges, because I think we need to be able to stand up there and take that feedback, whether we agree or not. And it's honest feedback that needs to be taken into account, because, if depending on who you're trying to market to, you got to take in that feedback, and you may have to pivot, or you might need to make some tweaks. But I definitely hope to see more opportunities for game studios to pitch and to get that kind of feedback, and just create that cycle so that we can just get used to that routine to take in that feedback from judges. Because I think it's so critical, and it's critical to just take that different feedback, because not everyone's gonna love it. And you want to understand why and where they're coming from.
Sure. I do want to say one other thing about that, though, is I do think that there's also a fun line. Like, if you believe in something, you should stick to that belief, but
for sure.
Be willing to adjust if need be, right?
Exactly.
And so,
exactly.
I'm not saying that we should always listen to what everyone else says, because that's not the right answer. But there's a time and a place, like you said, Corey, right?
Yeah. No, exactly. Well, like I said, best of luck to all the studios. And again, looking forward to seeing more pitch competitions of game studios pitching their games, whether it's informal or formal, but nonetheless with, a community panel to kind of go through feedback, to just figure out different ways for improvement or adjustment if needed. But love those environments. And it was great to be a part of that pitch competition. Looking forward to seeing what is happening next year, of course, for AGS with another follow-up pitch competition, and seeing who's going to be there in terms of Calgary studios, Edmonton studios, or studios across Alberta. Moving into, of course, connections, networking, pitches. We had Alberta studios making connections, of course, with investors, publishers, licensing partners, and corporate funds at the Game Invest West Summit in Banff. And of course, winner and runner-up from the AGS pitch competition were able to be in attendance. And of course, another annual pilgrimage, the Montreal International Game Summit, happened in November. And we had the first cohort of the Exola Scaffold Game Accelerator program that wrapped up in December. For 12 weeks, early stage studios learned how to create playable demos and publisher-ready pitch decks. As far as we understand, additional cohorts are scheduled in early and mid-2026. Curious, between the two of you, Mike, Rowan, anything from these programs? I feel like on the business development side, at least, what's been your take so far on what you've heard from events like this or accelerator programs?
I haven't seen any investment dollars be closed yet. I've heard rumor that there are some VC firms out east that have had some meetings and discussions with some people in the area, potentially looking to find companies that they're able to invest in. So, I think that programs like this that are trying to make those connections and make it so that people can bring in the investment, I think that's kind of what the ecosystem needs. I can't speak to it too much because I don't know anybody that's been through the program. I don't know anybody that went through either the Accelerator or Game Invest West, but I know that they were things that are happening. And like I said, I like to see people trying to attract investment into the ecosystem, because that's something that we would really like to have for sure.
I haven't been to any of these events as well, but I do feel like that investment is kind of a missing piece here. But I think that all the work that we've talked about so far in the podcast, such as the events and the activities, is going to increase the opportunity for investment. I've seen in other work that I've done where the saying of success begets success is very true. So as we start to build this engine of this community in Alberta through these community groups like CGDA Alberta and Edmonton Game Camp and these events, we're going to see more of an interest of outside parties wanting to be a part of that and to be investing in that. I've seen that outside of the games industry. I think we will see it here. It just will take some time and that consistent approach.
No, 100%. I'm curious to get a more interesting take from the investment front. Of course, we have a surprise drop guest joining us. Of course, we have Rosche Rheeder, CEO and game director at Lucid Rain Studios. Thanks for joining us, Rosche. Finally. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
How are you?
It's totally fair. It's totally fair, man. It's funny. Like, I was going through my schedule today, and it's right before my team and I are kind of like closing things down for the holidays.
That's fair.
And I was chatting with Ricardo and Delina, who are founders with me, and I was asking them, like, guys, do we have any plans, like anything that we need to close up before the end of the day today? Like, can we go into like a bit of a break? And they're like listing off a bunch of things. Like, there's some shred stuff we need to go through. There's some CMF stuff that we need to close up on because we got approved for another project.
Oh,
And
fantastic.
and I'm going through it, and I'm like, no, I think we're good. We're totally fine. I can take a day off today. Great. I don't usually get Saturdays off, so that's nice. And I'm sitting in the living room, and I'm chilling, and I'm like, oh, right. I have a podcast today. I need to get ready for that. And I hop on, and I check my email, and there's a Google Meet link there, and I'm
No.
hitting the Google Meet, and I'm sitting there. I'm like, okay, this is gonna be fun. I'm really excited because end of the year discussion. It's always a good time. A lot of reflecting, and I'm sitting and no one's in the room, and it's like 10 minutes past. I'm like, interesting. Okay, maybe I'll text Corey and see what's up. And then I realized I don't have Corey's number. I can't text Corey. So then I was like, oh, okay, well then maybe I'll email Corey. And then I got pulled into something else. I was like, I'll email Corey in a bit. And then I didn't. And then I looked at the email a little closer, and I was like, oh, no, Riverside. Oh. So I made a conscious decision, and I was like, I could either just text Corey and be like, hey, man, it's going to be super awkward if I just jump in. Do you still want me to? Or I could just come in and, you could roast me, and that could be a lot more entertaining.
You're a
So,
brave soul.
Yeah,
You
no
are a
doubt.
brave soul, and I commend you. And honestly, it's all good. The part that I'll likely cut out of this episode is probably the part where I roasted you the most. But it's okay.
But
It's
that's
okay.
for real.
I feel like I roasted Rowan more so because he's from Calgary, but it's all good. Don't hate me, guys. Don't hate me. I'm doing my best as a content creator.
There's something
I
to
can
the
tell
whole
with the
game development.
mustache.
There's something to the whole game development mindset about Roche's decision to come in. We could make it some sort of an analogy. Everything
Courage.
could be connected. Yeah,
Courage.
Exactly.
Courage.
That's pretty much on point, I would argue.
Yeah, you
It's
go.
we've been running the studio now for 4 years, and for the first time in that lifespan, I am full time. I people full time, and I was thinking back, and it's like, man, we're getting a lot done now that we're all full time, like a lot. How did we expect to get the game done without anyone actually being full time, let alone like, doing full time hours on top of a job? How would we get that done? I have no idea. Compared to what we've accomplished now, like it is literally a night and day experience.
Yeah. No, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. Well, without having to restart the whole episode, because I'm not going to do that. We're past that. But I do want to get your take, Rosche, actually, just given your multiple hats, of course, running your studio, and I think, obviously being involved with Shred Capital, with the Scaffold Institute. Really curious, obviously we were just been talking about investment and industry connections for Alberta studios. We had Game Invest West in Banff. We had the Montreal International Game Summit back in November. And then, of course, we just, I believe, just wrapped up the first cohort of the Exola Scaffold Game Accelerator program. Anything on those three in particular that you care to kind of get your thoughts on? Did Lucid Rain get to Game Invest West? Any involvement with the accelerator program? Just curious to get your take.
So I'll say for the Xala Accelerator, I actually was not part of that. I assisted in like some early setup work, and then I kind of needed to step away as soon as the studio got funding.
Right.
So I've largely actually stepped away from a lot of my involvement with Scaffolds just purely because of I'm just getting too busy now.
That's fair. That's fair.
And but I will say, from speaking to Matt, from speaking to the folks at Scaffold,
Hmm.
it was a good success, and I can see them doing it again. The whole idea was to bring together a bunch of like publishers into a room, pitch around 6 studios to them, and then basically get some paperwork signed, right? Whether or not something did come out of it, I can't say because I don't know, and they won't tell me until everything's sorted out.
That's fair.
But
Yeah.
from what I've been told, it was successful. It's kind of one of those things where I find when Alberta developers are talking about publishers, right?
Yeah.
I think there's almost an expectation that we want publishers just to recognize us just because we're developers and we exist. I think there's a bit more nuance to it, right? Because from what I learned not so long ago, I went to Gamescom with my team,
Mm.
and there is definitely a thing with publishers where it's reputation based on region success, right? So
Right.
Alberta was on the map because of BioWare. And
Yeah.
then BioWare is obviously kind of like, I don't want to say downscaled, but BioWare's relevance in the industry has somewhat become a little bit questionable and shaky. Like, I think we can all comfortably say that, right? And then Inflection has obviously been doing some cool stuff. And from what I understand, there's still some new announcements coming from their way.
They just posted their hiring. I will want to
Yes. Yeah.
throw that in there. They have posted as of this month in December 2025. They are hiring some new positions,
Which is very exciting. And then we all learned something super interesting, that we've got a new AAA giant coming up here in Edmonton, Argonaut Studios, I think they're pronounced.
Yeah. We threw that up in the Edmonton headlines earlier.
Yeah.
Exciting news. Hence the
It's
Star
so
Wars
exciting.
T-shirt, Rosche. Like, come on, I got to represent.
It is really
exciting.
exciting for a lot of reasons, right?
Yeah.
Let alone obviously Casey Hudson's heading it, which
Mhm.
his name alone carries a lot of weight.
Yeah.
But I think this is a good thing for a lot of Alberta developers, because like I was just mentioning, when we were out in Germany, a lot of publishers that we spoke to for our studio, we would say where we're from. We would say kind of, where Edmonton is based and so on and so forth, and wouldn't really make much headway there in general, except as soon as I linked it to the same city as BioWare. Then there was some link there, right? But oftentimes I would get like, oh, you're from Canada. Are you in Quebec? Are you in Montreal? Are you in BC? Right? And there is such a thing as reputation, that a lot of publishers are looking at how good is an ecosystem set up in a local province, in a local government, because that does communicate to them what kind of provincial entities are they going to be working with, right? There's obviously the federal, but then is there some municipal entities? Is there some provincial, right? Like, what are they dealing with that's not just the government, right? And
Right.
I had a really frank conversation with some people at Team 17, and they were telling me that they've been eyeing, like, Western Canada for quite some time. They've been having some great conversations. They were actually here at GDC in 2021, 2022. I think that's when I met you, Corey. Was sorry, not GDC,
G-
AGS, Alberta Game
AGS.
Series. That's when I
Yeah.
met you. And they gave a talk, but beyond that, they've kind of like shied away, right? And a lot of it is definitely reputation based. So I do think, Argonaut Studios' existence right now is good for a multitude of reasons, right? It kind of puts another staple on Alberta and Edmonton specifically. Sorry, Calgary folks, you guys have got so many nice things going on. I can take a little win for Edmonton right now. I love Calgary too, though. But I think Argonauts right now is a positive spin. A Star Wars title here, and not just any Star Wars title, like something that seems like it's closely resembling KOTOR, which is obviously an industry darling, right? I think it's great. I think it's good. And then obviously we've got the indie scene that's piling up, right? Part of a lot of my job this year and last year was working with a lot of indie studios and helping them find funding, find elements where they can, look towards non-dilutive funding that you just mentioned, Rowan, when I came in. But sometimes the CMF can't be your only option, right? Because you don't hear back from CMIF, you don't get the funding, you're waiting another 6 months for another opportunity against 150 to 200 plus studios that are applying for the same round, right? So I think now we're gonna see a bit of a shift. I do think there's a bit of a positive shift that's gonna come our way. It's just, can we keep up the momentum of who we are? What are the studios that are making games right now? What kind of games are they making? Let's put the spotlight on Alberta and Alberta developers instead of individual Alberta studios, right? I do think that kind of group mentality carries a lot of weight right now in the games industry. We're seeing some really cool titles coming out of some European studios at the moment, where they're doing kind of like these little cohorts, these little collectives of studios coming together, working on help beat bumping each other up, sharing each other's projects on their socials, right? And that's something that has definitely started happening here. I mean, we had Isaac with Crimson Herring, formerly Crimson Herring, but they are
Yeah.
now they
Zugaru
published
Entertainment.
Hunter's
Yeah.
Moon,
Yeah.
which
Hunter's Moon.
it's crazy. When I got into the space, I was actually at Isaac's launch party for Sovereign Syndicate, and now I came to his Hunter's Moon one, and it's like, it's cool to see that kind of growth, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's a big thing. We as an industry here in Alberta, we need to learn to be able to bring each other up, so the
Yeah.
rest of the world can see that we all exist, so the publishers can see that we exist, and then there can be this really great like cycling of talent in Alberta. That's, I don't think a lot of the studios here can hire developers full time. It's mostly contract. So let's give these contractors, these developers, opportunity to work on cool projects. They can build up their portfolios. The studios can build up their portfolios, and then we can get that momentum moving forward. And we can hopefully then show the government, hey, we were given twigs and we ended up building like an entire monument out of it. So, maybe give us some better building materials and we can do even better for you, right? Games
Exactly.
industry is not going anywhere.
Yeah.
It's only growing, getting bigger. I did see some interesting reports come out not too long ago where hardware sales are down for the first time since 1996 in the US. And that can be a lot of factors contributing to that. But video game digital sales have been the highest ever this year. And next year it's going to get even more.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of positive spin, I could say, about the industry and right now the investment sector.
For sure.
It's about educating those that, specifically that Alberta Oil, educating them on like, hey, this is not a $1 million industry. This is not a $1 billion industry. This is now becoming a $1 trillion industry, right?
Yeah.
100%. And there's a lot to explore here, right?
Yeah. Well, it's great.
Yeah.
I love what you're saying. It's music to my ears because honestly, I feel like it's honestly conversations like this. We have someone heading up an indie studio. We have someone in academia. We have someone in business development. And we're basically covering two of the major cities in Alberta. And I think there continues to have to be these conversations, these partnerships. Mike, you talked about it earlier, bringing community, academia together for events to showcase talent, showcase made in Alberta talent and stuff. So yeah, I think there continues to, I think the momentum will continue for sure. I hope. I think there's definitely a lot more work to continue to be done, obviously, with groups like Edmonton Screen, Calgary, CGDA, NAIT on the post-secondary side. So, obviously we've started to see some MOUs happen in the tech space between organizations like Edmonton Unlimited and Platform Calgary on the entrepreneurial side within the startup community. Could we see something similar on the game development side? I don't know what that looks like, but arguably, I hear what you're saying, Rosche. Like, obviously, not just coming from an Edmonton lens or Calgary lens, but from an Alberta lens is vital, and we just want to keep continuing that. Obviously, accelerator programs on the investment connection side, like Scaffold, do we, and I kind of want to open it up between you, Rosche, but also hear from you, Rowan, in particular, because obviously Mike is part of the academic side for post-secondary for students to get trained and just be industry ready. When you're out in industry now, obviously we have these accelerator programs that are kind of popping up. They're here, they're there. But then we just saw basically the accelerator program support from Alberta Innovates being completely yanked. And that doesn't really exist as strongly in the tech community. So what does that say for game development based off of your guys' experience and seeing things like the Exola Scaffold Game Accelerator program? You see the Scaffold Institute and their work that they're doing, but is it enough? Are we doing the right things? Are we providing the right resources apart from academia?
Rowan, I don't know if you want to go first, but I do have a thought on this.
Oh yeah, you go first.
Yeah, you go,
I can say
Rosche.
something after.
Yeah.
I think so. I think anytime something gets cut with the government,
Yeah.
I think it's important to recognize that it's never that money is actually gone. It's just redistributed.
Right.
Right. So it's redistributed in terms of how it's communicated to the government,
Right.
what we need in order to grow in X, Y, and Z. Right now, yes, that cut did happen, but it's not like that money just disappeared. It did get
Right.
redistributed
Yeah.
for other opportunities.
Yeah.
And I would argue like whatever, like some of the programs that NAIT is putting on right now, some of the programs that Scaffold is putting on specifically as like a step, the next step essentially from that education, right? Is to teach how to communicate with people, how to build relationships, how to network, not in the employee sense, but in the sense of like, I'm starting up a studio. What does it mean to network? Because it's definitely a different song and dance, right? So a lot of that money is getting redistributed. So then all what we need to do as developers is maybe just shift our focus from what we know right now into what we don't know at the moment, right? Scaffold exists. It didn't get money magically. It did get money from government entities, right? And it's there as a government incentive for developers to learn on the business end of running a game studio, right? Just because it was communicated that is something that's lacking in Alberta, for example, right?
Right.
I can't speak for NAIT, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's new incentives that are brought up based on conversations that was delivered to the organization, right? So I think it's important for developers to recognize, because I've definitely heard this where it's like, I've lost this incentive, therefore I can't do X, Y, and Z, right? And trust me, like, I've been trying to get money from my studio for 4 years. I get it, but there is such a thing as like, sometimes we do need to chart uncharted waters in order to find where that money can come from, right? And it's never going to be forever money. There's never like, even the CMF. I know it's been
Yeah.
around for a while. I wouldn't be surprised if it disappears sometime, right? Like, we were worried that it would get cut this year from the current federal elections, right? And it didn't get cut, but it did get a lot of modifications, right? Like, there's a lot of new stuff that came in, and the most recent prototyping round and the most recent production round is showing that there is a shift in the mindset of how they're judging projects now, right? Even our comments from some of our stuff from prototyping and production, different, very different. So there is that element where I do think, to kind of circle back to what you were asking about Gaming Invest West, where I do think developers should start looking to is getting into as many of these opportunities as you possibly can. Making, like, if ESIO is setting up an opportunity for some other grant or some other like marketing thing to put your name on the map, take it, go for it. If Scaffold right now is doing Game Invest West, right? And you might think to yourself, well, I'm not going to get money that day because, like, these are just people that, rich people you're having conversation with. They're not going to sign the check tomorrow. I don't know of anyone who will sign a check the next day. So just to be frank, right? But if you can treat Game Invest West kind of like how you treat Gamescom, in that you're going there to meet people, to have the first round of conversation,
Right.
to then lead
Yeah.
to the second round conversation. What's the saying? The 30 seconds leads to the minute leads to the 5 minutes, 5 minutes leads to the 30, 30 leads to 3 hours, 3 hours leads to you selling your soul to a publisher, right? So like there is kind of like a method to the madness of going to as many of this stuff as you can. Okay. I
Right.
say this, and I failed at it this year myself alone when I didn't go to AGS this year because I really wanted to. And I didn't because we were like knee deep in sending out some publisher builds. But recognizing that these events exist, that they're there, going to them, applying for any Canadian award ceremonies, right? Like,
Mm.
we got nominated. I just found out we're a finalist yesterday for the Canadian Choice Awards, which,
Oh, congrats.
okay, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I didn't apply for it.
Right.
And we found out we got nominated by a third party. So it's like, that's awesome, right? That's putting our name on the map. That's opening up opportunities. That
Yeah.
potentially opens up the doors from other investors to see, oh, what's this small little studio that's doing something that I'm into? Maybe I'm into games, maybe I'm into Lovecraft, maybe I'm into horror or action or whatever the case is. I have money. Where do I want to put that money? People won't know you exist until you show yourself out there that you exist. And I
Right.
really, really feel like these events that are being put up, ESIO is doing some good stuff. I know Calgary Game Association is doing some really cool stuff right now, right, with the recent accelerator program that they've set up, right? And there's a handful right now that I'm forgetting, but throughout the year, I've been seeing more and more programs. And what I'll say is, for a lot of developers, go to as many of them as you possibly can. It will only do your studio good, and it will put Alberta on the map more and more. Because it is a numbers game. With the
Love it.
government, it's a
Yeah.
numbers game. If you can show numbers, you
Exactly.
can show interest, and you can make progress with the government.
Right. One thing I'll quickly clarify, Rowan, I really want to get your quick take on this. Yeah, I heard what you're saying in terms of Rosche about the kind of reallocating funds to something else. It didn't just disappear; it's reallocated. 100%, that's always the case. I will say though, from an optic standpoint, is really where I think I'm coming from. Is optics
Yeah.
wise, it looks kind of, oh shit, like like
Yeah.
things are changing. But on the
Yeah.
game dev side, obviously we're seeing more things pop up, which is a positive. So Rowan, I'm really curious to get your take, especially from that business development side.
Yeah.
Obviously we're seeing things pop up in Calgary, and ideally potential blueprint to seeing what could be done in Edmonton as well, whether that's an MOU to not reinvent the wheel, but also, what's your take?
Oh man, there's a lot that's been said over the last few minutes that I have so much I could speak to, but
We'll do
I
part
don't.
2 in the new year. It's okay.
Yeah, we're gonna have to. I would say that first and foremost, one of the things that you mentioned was Alberta Innovates funding being cut and stuff changing there. I think it's worth noting that doesn't affect games companies really at all. I think because we were
Right.
at a very weird intersection between tech and games, so that's why
Right.
we were able to get funding from a lot of different pieces. I say we, my company, the one I stepped away from, but one of Alberta Innovate's prerogatives is to not fund video games. So
Right.
they were always not really interested in doing that. So their funding being cut doesn't necessarily matter. I'll also note Alberta Innovates has an accelerator, Alberta Catalyzer, that they run at a
Yes.
platform here in Calgary.
Yeah.
And
In
then we've
partnership
also
with Edmonton
got,
Unlimited.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So there's pieces there for tech companies, not for
Yeah.
game studios. But there was,
Yeah.
I mean, having been through that accelerator, there was no prize money or anything. It was,
Yeah,
here are
no.
the cool things for it, but there's nothing in that. A lot of what accelerators offer is the experience and the knowledge and getting experts in front of people. It's really interesting to me that Bow Valley College's Indie Ignition exists, and they do give a lot of money to the winners. I think it was like 12 grand or something for first place in this latest cohort. And there were prizes in cash for the top 3. And then they also had a sponsor that was giving cash for females in game development spaces. Having women in
Love
games is an amazing thing, and we need to
Yeah.
see more of that representation. So
1000%.
I think that the cash prizes out of accelerators is super cool, but Bow Valley is the only one that I do see doing that. So it's like, that's that transition that Rosche kind of talked about, where it's like transitioning to be full-time or having people that you can pay, contractors and stuff, to do things in a larger capacity. That requires cash, and that's a huge stepping stone that makes a significant difference. And then there was another thing that Rosche mentioned, talking about people going to events and doing as many things as you can. As a biz dev guy, I don't really believe in luck as much. I think luck is when you put yourself in the line of fire of opportunity, right?
Yeah.
And if you're not putting yourself in that line of fire, you're not getting yourself out there, then luck can't ever happen, right? It's when preparation meets opportunity. So I could speak volumes to that, but there's some really good stuff being said here today.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's kind of my 2 cents on all that.
Man,
No, I love that.
there's so much truth to that.
Yes.
Absolutely. Like, it's just, I feel like you need to treat game development as a game in and of itself, right? Like,
Yeah.
you're gonna fail a lot, and even on the biz dev or fundraising side, it doesn't mean that you can't, like, keep trying, learning from what you're trying, right? Because oftentimes it could just be someone just edged out over you slightly. That's happened a lot.
No, for sure.
They need to make a game called Game Developer Simulator. Remember the old VR game Job Simulator? Make a game
my
called
God.
Game Developer Simulator.
Oh, that
You
should
said
be a
it now.
thing.
Now someone's gonna make it.
Now someone
the minute
needs
you
to create
speak
it.
something into existence, it's gonna be made.
That's gonna be the best-selling game for like the next 5 years. Mike, I'm curious though. From an academic standpoint, we talk about Bow Valley and Calgary. Putting on this accelerator, we've seen a lot of spin-offs out of academia in Edmonton, specifically around, I think, the U of A in particular, when it comes to tech, health sciences, things like that. But I'm curious, like, do you get the sense from your experience in academia, coming from Lethbridge, coming up to Edmonton, being in cities, not Calgary, but do you see appetite for having that kind of accelerator program thrive and percolate out of institution like NAIT?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, so NAIT, you mentioned earlier on our Maji Center for Entrepreneurship. They do have accelerators and pitch competitions. I think one of the challenges that I think, and it might have been alluded to, I'm not sure, earlier on the podcast, that I think we have to do is to educate those not in this space that game development is a business, that it is an investable business, and it's not just a hobby, right? And I think that's something that we still need to work on, because you see in every school in Alberta, every business school in Alberta has mentorship, pitch competitions, entrepreneurship. We don't see as much of that in the game space. So actually, I give a huge kudos to Bow Valley College for doing that. But I think that can change. I think that there is an opportunity to change that, both practically, but also the mindset.
No.
Yeah.
Well, before I get into the 2026 preview of some of the things we can hopefully expect next year, obviously we have a game studio owner in the call right now. So I do want to get a quick thing if we missed anything in terms of the last 3 months or so. I know, Rosche, there was talk about CMF funding and things like that earlier this year, I think. But anything else that we may have missed that you'd love to share with us at this point in time that have taken place in the last few months with your studio, Lucid Rain?
Man, this is almost way too much that's happened in the last few months. I'm not gonna lie.
That's fair.
I wrote a year in the review mail that's gonna go out to our subscribers on like just everything that happened this year for us and my team. I guess first and foremost, like I mentioned, everyone went full time on my team.
Congrats.
We have some people from the UK. We have some people from South Africa, where I was born and raised. We have Canadians. Majority of our team's Canadians. Something that I've learned and that I really love about the games industry is just how global this industry really is. When we went to Germany, right, we thought we feel like kind of outsiders, like a first-time indie studio coming up to pretty much one of the biggest game events in the world.
Yeah.
just for a little stat here for some people, like Gamescom this year, there was roughly around over the whole week that it was running, there was 356,000 people that came in and out of that event. It was wild. I've never seen that. And I used to work as a peace officer and I did a lot of crowd stuff before. Like I've never seen a crowd that huge. Like it was insane. And it just shows like in a time when there was a lot of uncertainty in the industry, it's only growing, right? We also made our announcement trailer 3 months ago and we got featured on IGN, which was massive for us. I remember when we found out when we were in Germany that the trailer was performing well on some of other channels that we sent it out to. And then we were like to our PR rep team, we're like, can you get us on IGN, please? Like that would just be the cherry on the cake. If I can get a trailer on IGN, I don't care if it's right before all the Gamescom announcement trailers, because it was literally the night before. And I don't care when they post it. I just want to have it on there. I want to mark that as an accomplishment for our first game as a studio. Some people might look at that and be like, okay, it's not a big deal. But to be frank, it really is. Marketing wise, it's a big deal to get your game featured on IGN. We see a lot of games there, but you also don't see 80% of games that don't make it on there. Right? They do have an intense filter that they go through. So it went on, it performed really well. We saw a lot of foot traffic into our Discord. We saw a lot of foot traffic into our Steam page, right? And this year was us transitioning away from a lot of our prototyping workflow into pre-production into production. So as of October, we entered full-time production as a studio. And we are looking at we haven't announced a release date, and I'm not going to do it over here, but we're looking at a soft release date of Q4 2026. I am going to say, though, I am heavily debating changing that date because Rockstar decided to push GTA 6 into November 2026, and I'm like, God damn. I don't know if this is a blessing or a curse, but it is now a decision and a challenge we need to now face. So we're having some internal debates at the moment. Delay is not bad. It's not a bad thing at all. I'm definitely not going to compete with Rockstar. That's marketing suicide. So we're making decisions on that at the moment. But yeah, and then I think, like I just mentioned, we did get nominated for a Canadian Choice Award, which is obviously very flattering. We've got some interesting stuff cooked up for next year for updates on the
Feel like we'll
game
have a
and
follow-up on the
some
show.
maybe. Yes, we can
There we go.
we can do a follow-up.
Yeah,
We can
we'll
do a
talk.
follow-up.
We'll talk.
I will say we have now officially a few more projects in the works that's gonna work hand in hand. So
Exciting.
so yeah, I'm just super blessed. I'm really happy. It's been a remarkable year for my team. They worked really hard. A lot of them just came on and wanted to be a part of the project, expressed interest into the project, and really helped make the studio, my studio, what it is, right? We've got 16 people on our team. We've got some vets and we've got a lot of juniors, and they've been doing incredible. I don't know if you guys got a chance to see our trailer, but yeah,
But I'll link it in the show notes, and if
thank you.
possible, I'd love to include it as part of this episode for people to watch or listen to.
Yeah, thank you. I'd appreciate that. That'll be awesome. But yeah, it's been good. Honestly, the whole starting up a studio, the whole journey we've been on, like I said, it's not like we started the studio and got money the same year. We started the studio and we applied CMFs a few times and failed, right? We pitched to publishers. We started game projects, and sometimes it can be really difficult shutting down a game, but it was based on factors and metrics that it didn't match the vision, or it was not, we couldn't pull it off with the scale of the studio that we had. So we had to make the difficult decision of shutting down a project we were working on for 6 months, for example, right? To something that was more manageable that we learned from. I will say, if anyone's out there starting up a studio, I would love to just say, find yourself people that you can trust, you can work with, that you can rely on, learn to delegate, and definitely try not to be the only founder. See if you can find some, like, three's a magic number, man. I'm telling you, you got to have someone with money who's good with money. You got to have someone who's good with vision, and you got to have someone who's good with technical skills. That has been the magic formula for us, and it has been phenomenal. I
Love
largely
that.
think it's the reason why we are where we are.
That. I love that. Well, silver lining, I mean, we got the spiritual successor to Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic before GTA. So I consider that a win, and it's coming out of Edmonton. So hoorah. Well, as we look into 2026, of course, planning is well underway, I would imagine by now. Global Game Jam 2026 at the end of January. Hosting cities are for in-person participation include Edmonton, Calgary, and Lethbridge. Tickets are available already on Eventbrite, and other ways to get involved, sign up, participate, or just be a spectator. GameCon Canada, of course, returns in June for its third installment at the Edmonton Expo Center. Of course, more details and tickets available at gameconcanada.com. I'm curious, we talk about events, getting involved, getting out there, promoting your studio, promoting yourself, just getting involved in community from a student standpoint or just community member standpoint. But GameCon Canada in particular has really become a real staple, I think, for us here in Alberta, for those of us in Edmonton and Calgary, people flocking to the City of Champions to check this out for now its third year. So hopefully we can keep the momentum going and keep it here in Canada, here in Alberta. Mike, I want to move it over to you. Curious, GCC involvement. What's NAIT's perspective on GameCon this upcoming year? What should students watch out for? And maybe what should the community look out for as well?
Yeah, thanks for it, Corey. So yeah, this will be our third year sponsoring it. So we sponsored it for the last 2 years, and we're there. And I was actually there last year because I was at NAIT already at that point, and
Right.
just being able to see the energy that was there. If you haven't been to GameCon Canada, like their mega stage was off. I don't know if kids say these off the hook these days still, but it was amazing. Like it was the large studios or large stage was amazing. And I think one of the things that I love about this, that I particularly loved about GameCon Canada, was the indie game highlight. There was a
Yes.
lot of indie game studios there, and actually Alex Ritchie and Oat Software were there, and we actually had them at our booth, and we had like a contest going on. So Oat Software has Highway Hijinks, which is a infinite runner game but racing, and we had 4 stations there, and basically whoever got the highest score won a Quest 3 VR headset. And that was such an engaging part of our booth, so we're looking to see how we can up that next year. Don't have any spoilers to share at this point, but NAIT will be there. And I think it just encouraged everyone who's interested in anything Comic-Con, games related, whether it's board games or digital games, to really be present there, because it's a great community event to kind of learn, connect, and get some wares. I remember one of the things I ended up getting was from a local 3D, I can't remember the company's name, but there was a local Edmonton-based company that does 3D printing, and I got a Mario 3D printed piranha plant out of the pipe there. It's on my desk at work. So it's a great way to support local economy as well.
Love it. Love it. Well, Rowan, Rosche, neither of you at AGS this year, but can we count on your faces at GCC next year? As far as I remember,
Yeah.
on the Calgary side, there were some really kick-ass arcade machines that I feel like Edmonton needs to replicate, because that was phenomenal. But any take on either of your ends in terms of indie studio representation there and just showing up to GCC again for 2026?
I know I will certainly be there. I know that the CGDA is going to have a booth. I don't know what's going to be there yet. We're still kind of talking about it as directors. Moving the arcade machines is very expensive.
Fair.
So we're kind of trying to figure out what our plan is for what representation is going to look like, and then what studios are going to be coming up with us. But I can only imagine that the CGDA will definitely be there, and hopefully we'll have some indies with us.
Love to see that. Love to see that alongside, of course, Edmonton indies. Rosche, I feel like I ran into you at one point at
Yep.
GCC. You were spectating.
We were there
but
this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we were there this year. It was our first year. It was fun. I really liked it. I was
Nice.
really surprised by the scale of the event. I know
Mm.
it was the second one this year. Is that correct? Like this year was the second
This
one they set
past
up?
year, yeah, it was the
Yeah.
second time it was in
Yeah.
Edmonton.
It was impressive, and I will say, like, we didn't see a lot of, like, I would say, foot traffic, but what I did really appreciate from it was kind of like one-on-one interaction with our
Mm,
local community on what we were producing, right?
nice. Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize how many game studios are in Edmonton and how many are making cool stuff. So I think next year we're definitely going to come again, and we want to do a bit of a bigger booth because it'll be closer to release
Nice.
theoretically if we don't delay. But we're gonna do a bigger booth for sure, and yeah, well, I'm just excited. If anything, even if the metrics aren't great for us to be there in terms of getting wish lists or getting interest, I still think it's nice to go to a local Edmonton event and
Yeah.
go and represent Edmonton and Alberta in a larger spaced capacity, right?
Yeah.
I really do think it does wonders for the industry, for the community. There's a lot of growth that's been shown there. So yeah, you can definitely count on us being there for sure.
Perfect. No, I love that. Well, Edmonton Indies, Calgary Indies, like it seems like a great opportunity to showcase what's actually being built right in our backyards, and a great way to showcase people of especially younger generation participants of what could be done for a career and what could be done in their spare time playing a new game that's made here in Alberta. So really exciting stuff. Before we wrap, I know we covered a lot, and I've been so grateful for your time, for all three of you, in fact. Anything else before we go? Anything you want to toss in before that I might have missed that seemed to be a completely obvious thing to mention? Anything? No?
Did y'all talk about AI at
Oh,
all?
we did. We did.
That's a fun
That's
conversation.
part two of this. Yeah.
That was really
Yeah.
part two. Yeah, we got that out of the way at the beginning. But yeah, any particular AI workflows or anything that you're kind of implementing on your end, Rosche? Or no?
We are. I will just say this right now before I get attacked like Swen did from Larian recently. So
Oh
I
no.
will say we're not using AI art. We're not replacing developers, but I am seeing a broader adoption and acknowledgement of using AI in the
Hmm.
industry. I'm seeing a lot of it.
Yep.
And I think there's going to be some interesting developments next year specifically. I know Alberta's got a lot of interest in AI at the moment. So I guess I want to mention to a lot of developers, AI, like, it's a tool. Understand the optics around it right now. Might not be the best time to mention certain things. There is in order to make a good argument for AI, I do think you need to meet people on the other side and understand why they have ethical issues with AI, and don't become an echo chamber when it comes to AI,
For sure.
right? Make an informed decision. If it makes sense for you, obviously do what you need to do, right?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's here to stay. It's not going to go anywhere, right? And I only see more and more money being flowed. Talk about where money's going right now. It's just more and more money towards AI.
No,
It is
fair.
actually crazy what's happening at the
Yeah.
moment.
No, it's a fair point. I mean, in terms, you talk about AI and just kind of getting out of those echo chambers and stuff. Obviously, in Edmonton, as a matter of fact, of course, we have the annual AI conference Upper Bound, powered by Amy, here in Edmonton. A great chance to just experience AI across other industry sectors as well, of course, but seeing how it could be implemented with games, in terms of workflows and things like that. Obviously, generative AI, part of the conversation, but again, just having honest conversations throughout, but also seeing how it can just save some time from building things. At least that seems to be something I keep bringing up, at least from an outsider's perspective. But nonetheless, yeah, exciting to see so many things coming out in 2026. Lots to look forward to. Hopefully, we see more amplification. I will certainly be doing my part with the show from a made in Alberta, made in Edmonton perspective. I know Mike just seen previous comments around, made in Alberta marketing campaigns
Let's do it.
for Alberta Game Studios. I feel like that is an obvious one, and I think as a group effort, MOU, whatever you want to call it, let's figure that out. I think it needs to happen. So
Hey, that could be really cool. Like my studios right now, we're experimenting with the opening of our game,
yeah,
and there's obviously the engine we're using, some of the third-party software. Then there's like
yeah,
we have to mention the CMF there, and then there could be a nice little banner that says "Made in Alberta, Canada," and it's like
Yeah.
there you go.
that'd be cool. That'd be
Mike,
cool.
I think a badge of some sort, spearheaded by Digital Alberta, could be done to help spread that word of made in Alberta. But maybe
I
we'll
don't know
talk.
if you-
We'll talk.
Yeah, I don't know if you ever seen the Technology Alberta. Their I Love Alberta Tech.
Yes,
It's kind of a spin-off of the I Love Alberta Oil. Let's do something similar. Made in
yes.
Alberta. Yeah.
Okay.
I love Alberta games.
I love
Yeah.
There you
Alberta
go.
games. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we got some homework to do, us four.
do.
We got some homework. I'm just auto-assigning that. So, but yeah, we'll talk. We'll talk. 2026, I feel good. I feel good about next year. But this year definitely flew by. So with that, I want to thank all of you for taking the time for this quarterly roundtable. It's been absolutely fantastic and insightful. Of course, for those interested in connecting with each and every one of you and what you're working on or ways to get involved with what you're working on, where can they go? I'm going to start with Rowan. First off.
Yeah, sure. I mean, if you want to get more involved with the CGDA, Calgary.games is the best place to do it. People can try and connect with me on through the Discord server that we have there, or they can find me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to accept people's stuff if they throw in a name, what they're doing, kind of have some info. But generally, if in the connection request it says that they're in somewhere in Alberta, I almost always accept those. And I mean, I'm more than happy to have conversations with people.
Mike.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. So a few different hats. So feel free if you want to learn more about Digital Alberta, digitalalberta.com, where I'm a board of director there. If you want to learn more about NAIT and our game development program, just check out nait.ca. And we're still taking applications for next fall. And if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, similar to Rowan, just look up Mike McCready. I pretty much accept any invite that seems legitimate. And I'd love to talk more about what we're doing in this space. And I'd love to talk more about AI in general. So feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn as well.
Love it. Rosche, last but not least.
Yeah, there's a few ways you can get a hold of us. If you're interested in connecting with me directly on LinkedIn, I'm more than happy. I'm the same as you, Mike. I usually accept anything that's very legitimate. But if you're gonna hit me with like, joining your crypto program, I'm gonna be like, maybe another time. I don't know. But
Fair.
but yeah, LinkedIn is definitely the best way to contact me. If you're a developer and you just have questions and you wanna riff a little bit, I'd be more than happy to jump on a call with you and just have chats. I'm very developer friendly, so please, anyone out there, you want connections, you want to talk, hit me up. And then if you wanna hit up my game, Furious on Steam, we have a website. We have a mailing list. We're doing a lot of cool shit next year. Am I allowed to swear, Corey?
Yep.
Just
Yep. You're
okay,
good. You're
doing
good. You're
a
good.
ton of cool shit next year. So definitely check us out. And yeah, join our Discord. It's a great time. We're gonna be starting up a pretty cool marketing campaign next year.
Love it.
One of our first tasks that's coming up. So yeah, please check it out if you like horror games.
Love it. Love it. Well, you can catch all the details and, of course, other episodes of the show at goodgameyeg.ca. And that time of year again, of course, happy holidays and a happy new year to you, your family, and your team. Here's to 2026. May it be more productive, collaborative, and a prosperous year. Cellarcast out.
What a cold demise, pilgrim. The inferno bids it so. 9 dominions vast in despair, where sinners' souls are bound to eternal punishment, ruled by 9 beings sired from sin. You pilgrims, though, you evade those bindings. Your soul is branded inferious. A chance at redemption. To face the sins incarnate is your trial, where the battle for your soul lies in the cards. But to prove you're an opponent of worth, you must brave each ruler's dominion and the dread within.